So our focus today is not going to be on every aspect of search within FileHold. Our focus is going to be on the core mechanics of how FileHold searches and how we can start doing what's called a full text basic query or a simple search. So our simple way of getting into search here. So let's start to ask the question, what does it mean to search in a DMS? What does it mean to actually get into a DMS and perform a search? Well, there's two ways that we find information online, and I'm going to use some analog versions to a non-online for how we talk about finding information. But when we talk about looking for information, we're really finding it in one of two ways. We're probably going to be doing browse and discover, where we're going through and we're looking for context clues to find information. We're browsing, we're hunting around, and then we discover the correct information. We're probably going to find more false information than we will true information, but that's okay. It's part of the process of browsing and discovering. That's very different than search and locate. Search and locate means I have something very specific in mind. I know what I want to find, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to find that. I'm going to get that information and bring it straight across to myself as soon as I have that. Now we know these sort of ways of working. If you browse and discover, the simplest example it might be an encyclopedia. You look at the context clue for the encyclopedia, such as the letters that it covers or what volume it is. You open it up, you flip through the pages, you discover the information as you go. You're not directly taken to what you need. Another example it would be a filing cabinet. I go over to my filing cabinet, I look at the label on the front of it, I open it up, I look through my drawers, look through my folders, I find my documents, I start looking for my particular content. And actually, an even simpler example of that would be Windows. So if you've used Windows and a standard filing structure in Windows, then you know for sure that you've had to browse through someone else's folder structure until you eventually find exactly that thing that you're looking for. Now, that's different than search and locate. Search and locate is sort of similar to I have a pin on a map. I go to the pin, I see that location. That pin has been placed there for me, but I know what I'm looking for and I'm finding it by that particular location. Another example of that could be a bookmark. So when I have a bookmark that's going on inside of a text, I can jump to that spot. I can find exactly what I want because someone's put something there for me to find. I'm searching for something and I'm locating it straight away. And an analog to that would be your average web search, or Googling it as people tend to call it. So when I want to do those kind of searches, I'm jumping immediately to the subject that I want and I'm finding it straight away. I'm not having to dig through information to find it. Now, I might not get the right answer to start off with, but that's okay. Search and locate, browse and discover. So when we talk about browse and discover, it reveals information. We're finding things as we go. It makes connections between subjects. So oftentimes you stumble across things. If you've ever fallen down a Wikipedia hole, you'll know what I'm talking about with that. It's typically the best for research because I'm trying to find connections, find information. I'm gathering things as I go. I don't have a specific goal in mind. It's also highly inefficient from a business point of view. If I need to find a particular document, this is not the method I want to use to do that because I have to trip across it. It also requires strict organization and discipline. Things can only be in one place typically with our browse and discover, and it's tough for me to find them. The way you get around that is often with duplication. So if I have a document that needs to be found by 3 or 4 different things, I'm going to put it in 3 or 4 different areas. Search and locate, on the other hand, shows results. I'm looking for the exact thing that I'm after as opposed to discovering things as I go. I'm getting exactly what I need. It's best for information as opposed to research. It's highly efficient because I'm getting to what I want it to be. It allows for modalities in information retrieval. So if I want to tag things with metadata, I can do that. If I want to look for things by file name, I can do that. If I want to look for things by subject, I can do that. Think of the difference between a card catalog at a library, those physical card catalogs, versus a computer system searching for a book. If I want to look for everything in the romance section, I can look for the word romance and search for it that way. Or I can look for it by subject, or by title, or by author, or by the call number. I have different ways of finding that information. And it's more intuitive to online work. You tend to work in search and locate far more than you do in browse and discover. So because of that, I would think that search and locate is best for business. It's our strategy we want to use in order to find that information when we're looking for content. Now in FileHold, browsing is actually a type of search. So when we browse a folder within FileHold, and you can see a filing structure here, it's exactly the same thing as when you run a search. You can even see my search results up there, giving me the same number of values that I found. If I click on a folder versus saying, show me all the content of a library location within there, I get 32 documents each time. And that's because when we're doing when we're clicking on a folder within FileHold, what we're actually doing is bringing back a search result, but it feels like we're browsing and discovering when we're doing that. So that's why search is so important to our conversation today, because we need to understand that that browsing is unfocused and search is specific. So I didn't know what I was going to discover in that folder. When I clicked on it here, I said, I want to find the content of this folder, and now I'm ready to do greater searching. That's advanced search, and we're going to talk about that more next time. When a document is added to FileHold, values are automatically added to our search index. We're adding the text, we're adding the metadata, and we're adding the properties of that document into our search index. So for text, we're talking about a text layer for an electronic file. So if you produce a PDF from Microsoft Word, that will have a text layer built into it. Or if it's a Word file, that will also have a text layer. If it has text, that's automatically going to be added into our search index. If it's a flat file, such as a scanned document, you may be doing an OCR over top of it. Now, OCR is an optional feature for FileHold, so it's something you can always talk to your account representative about if you don't have that. But if you do want to pull that information out, we can also grab it that way. So there's two different ways to bring that text, either from the text layer or from an OCR, optical character recognition, to pull that text across. We can also come from metadata. Now, metadata is organization defined. So it's your metadata for your documents or as defined by your system. And that can be added manually by somebody typing that information in, or from an import process where we're already bringing it in from another source. Our last one is properties. Those are managed by FileHold. So things like the date the document was added or who owns it. That's also a searchable piece of information that we have in the system. Now, when we're doing our search, we're starting off with our simple search. We're using what's called the FTS, or full text search, and this is a filtered search. So it's important to understand that just adding a document into there doesn't mean that you're going to get all of the text and all of the metadata automatically given to you. We are filtering that information. First of all, we're going to include that document and record text, metadata, and file name and properties. So those are the key elements that go into that FTS, that full text search. But we're going to exclude some noise words, which I'll talk about in a second. We're also going to exclude punctuation. So your periods, your commas, your dashes, not part of your search. We're talking about a text-only search and the characters you might enter into there. We also have some capitalization that's not factored into there. So if I enter in something in all capitals versus non-caps, the search will find it either way when I'm using the FTS. So there's some powerful reasons to actually use that as an option. Noise words are short, low-value words for search results. When I say low value, I mean they don't really help me to define the exact document. So some examples of it are the, if, like, of, and, also, each, from. All of those would be considered noise words and be excluded from a search. Now you have a complete list of those noise words in our knowledge base, and if you want to get more information on those, you absolutely can. FTS is used by full text basic queries. So when we talk about our simple searches, our basic way of searching for documents, that simple search mode, we're talking about using the FTS exclusively. So we're not going to worry about things in that words like the or and, because they're not bringing a lot of value to that particular search that we're doing. All right, now let's take a look at our live demo here for FileHold. So let's bring up my desktop application. I hope everyone who's on this call knows about the desktop application. This is our my primary way for today of engaging with search, although I'm going to use the web client a little bit in a few minutes. There are three primary ways we can get into a search. The most obvious one is this right up here where it says full text basic query. So if I type something into this, I'm going to type the word Hamlet. It runs my search, and now it's doing that search that I was saying before. It's looking through all of my documents, through all of my text, all of my metadata, and bringing back all of my results. And in this case, it's giving me lots and lots of information from different things on Shakespeare. It's exactly what I expect to see when I'm searching for the word Hamlet. However, if I was doing real estate searching, maybe it might show me small English villages as well. We never know. We can see I've got my list of documents through here, and it's giving me some other information onto this. I'm going to come back to that in just 1 second. But before I take too far a dive down into what it's displayed for my results, let's talk about the other ways of doing a search. Our second way of doing a search is right-clicking a part of the library. So if I go over to my library here and expand this out here, I can right-click any part of this. So I can right-click here and select Search. and now it gives me a search for library location equal, so I've limited it to that spot, but I'm doing that same basic search I was doing before. Search in the file or metadata using the FTS. That is the definition of a simple search. I've just hidden those parts before. So now when I type Hamlet, I'm going to get a similar set of results to what I had before, except that I'm now going to limit it to only this location. The third way of getting into a simple search is just to come over here into your library tree and click search, and you get that simple search, full basic query, and now I'm ready to enter that information in. So again, we'll do our Hamlet that I did there before, runs our search and gives me my results. And notice here I've got one extra document that I did in my last search because we have documents in a different location. So because of that, we have a different set of access to that document. Now when I'm running that search, one of the key things FileHold is doing is it's going to keep your permissions of rights and access very much in mind. So because of that, this is a set of results that I can see because I'm a system administrator. Let's step away from being a system admin and let's log in with a different account. So here I'm using a different account, so let me just make sure I'm refreshed. There we are. I'm going to click on my search to start that simple search like I was doing before, and I'm going to enter in Hamlet, just like I did before. And we're going to see what we get for results. I get one result. I get one result because if I open up my library here, I don't get to see my test cabinet. This user, Tom test user, is not allowed to see those particular areas, so I only get back one result. As a system administrator, I get to see all parts of the library, and so I get to see the test cabinet, and therefore I see 47 results. So it's not fair to say that running a search and I don't get any results means a document's not there. It means a document may not be visible to me because I may not have a right to be able to see it, and that's kind of natural. If you expect to see a document and you don't see it there, one of the reasons may be because you don't have a right to see that content, and you should check with your admin to make sure that you should have access to it. All right, so here's my set of search results. Why did it give me this particular list of documents, and more importantly, why did it give it to me in this order? Well, let's take a look over here. We have a column. This column only exists in search, won't appear when I'm taking a look at my folder, called relevance. FileHold is calculating how relevant this document is to my search results, and it's going to give me that based on a few criteria. The first one is how present is that text, or how present is my search term in the document's text and in the document's metadata. Metadata is more heavily weighted. So if I have lots of examples of this in metadata, I should see this at a higher relevance. I'm also going to see it being more relevant based on the number of instances that it has in the document text. So in this case here, we've got my first example of Hamlet. Let's select this, and I'm going to go ahead and ask it to highlight the results. Now, highlight results has a great feature on it, which is at the very top here. It tells me how many instances of it's found in here, and then gives me a yellow highlight to where it is. Now, we can see there's a set of text here, and I want just to kind of, let's remember this a little bit. There are, for example, 3 very different versions of Hamlet, 2 of King Lear, Henry V, etc., etc. So I just want to remember that because we're actually going to see that in our other documents that we have that have been found in our search results, because these are all part of the same edition, and that set of phrasing appears over and over again. Now, this is the play of Hamlet, so I get 626 references. If I go down to this one here, which is an essay about Hamlet, and again, we select it, it only has 38 instances. So this is 6% relevant compared to this one, which is 100% relevant compared to this one, which is 99%, because these are actually different editions of the play. And so therefore, maybe this one has Hamlet a bit more. Or maybe it's because this one might have a metadata value that makes it more prominent. In this case, the document name is just Hamlet, nothing else attached to it. Remember, I'm ignoring any of that punctuation that may happen to be in there, so it's an important point to how we're giving our results. So we have our different versions of this. If I go down here to my Anthony and Cleopatra and select that, and again, full text highlighted results automatically loads because the window is open. And sure enough, we've got this same introduction here. There are, for example, 3 very different versions of Hamlet. So again, I've got these markers in here that's showing me that it's the same information. This one's only 1%. Because Hamlet's only found in this twice. It's only found in the introduction. Up here, it's found 600 plus times because, hey, he's a title character in the Shakespeare play. Let's close our search results. Don't need to see those anymore for now because I just wanted to show you that as an example. So to recap, we type in a word, we're given our results, we find our value. Now, you'll notice that as soon as I click that search, let's go back over to here. So again, we're in that simple search mode. I type my word in. And as soon as I do that, it puts me into an advanced search mode. The assumption is the next thing I'm going to want to do is make modifications to this. I'm going to want to add or refine my search. The simplest way of doing that is adding a search field. We're going to cover this a lot more in our next session when we talk about advanced search, but I want to introduce this here because I'm going to add another word in this. I'm going to add the word arrows. All right, runs my search again. I come back with 10 results. So I've pruned my results down from 46 results to 10 results. But actually, something else, I didn't have to add that second line. If I remove that second line there, and I come back up to here and I type in Hamlet arrows, I'm going to get the exact same number of results. When we're using our simple search, we are not searching for phrases. We are searching for individual words. So if I do a search for Hamlet arrows, what I've said is show me all documents where the word Hamlet and the word arrows is found in the document's text or metadata. Word being defined by having a space in between it. By the way, you'll notice that some of these titles down here have underscores in them. Underscores are treated as text by our search index. So what I've actually indexed here for Hamlet is Hamlet underscore PDF underscore folder Shakespeare because there's no spaces there to indicate different words. So if I'm looking at my word index, this is what it's done. And there is a 32 character limit to what goes into my FTS, into my search index. So there's a chance that if this kept going, it wouldn't be indexed at all because it'd be treated as noise because it doesn't have any spaces in between it. We treat a word as 32 characters because we're searching primarily for an English word. Now, I can change this search instead of being individual words to being a phrase. So this time, let's put quotation marks around this. So now I'm looking for Hamlet arrows as a phrase, and I come back with no search results. But if I change this, let's put our quotation marks on here again, and I go, let's see if I can type properly, slings and arrows, and I do my search for that. I come back with my 2 copies of Hamlet because for those of you who know the play, we know that slings and arrows of outrageous fortune is part of a phrase that's being used by this, and I've done my search. Now you remember when I was talking in the beginning about noise words, we know that the word and isn't actually being part of my search. It's being filtered out because it's a noise word. So it's really done is a search for slings, something, arrows. It's done a blank into there and it's treated as different words. But it knows that it's a 3-word phrase. It's just treating the and as a blank in order to bring me back faster, richer search results. Noise words bog down a search system and they can really drag down what we're doing for complex searches such as looking for a phrase amongst all of the plays of Shakespeare. Now that's one example of using a Boolean search term just from that basic simple search. Here's another one. Let's say that I'm looking for different, I don't know if it's arrow or arrows. So I might say I want to look for the word arrow, but I want to include arrows as well. So I might do a wildcard afterwards. Wildcard means here's my first part, the last part of this is going to be going. So you put an asterisk into there, and the asterisk acts as a wildcard. So now when I click search, it goes through my system and finds all instances of both the word arrow and arrows and emphasis, arrowing or arrowed or any other derivations of that where ARROW is used followed by something else. Maybe I want it to be so arrows, but nothing that's in the singular. Maybe I want it to be instead, maybe I'm worried someone's made a spelling mistake. So I might say I'm going to put a wildcard of a single character in the middle here. So now I'm looking for AR something OW. That something can be any singular character. And now when I run that search, it comes back with just the ones where it'll have the word arrow with AROW. But we can use a question mark to represent a single unknown character within there. So the 3 Boolean search terms that I want you to try to remember is we can always use quotation marks, which turns individual words into a phrase. We can use a question mark to represent a single character, or we can use an asterisk to wildcard for as many characters as we want after a string of characters or before a string of characters to make sure we come up with values for that. Now we'll talk more about our advanced search in our next session over here, because I certainly don't want to get into that today. It's far too big, and I've been very vague so far with my search terms. I've gone, very generic with Hamlet, and then trying something more specific. Let's ground this more in a use case. Maybe I know what the invoice number is. So I've gone into my accounting software. It said, show me, I need to find a particular invoice. So I type that number in, or I copy it onto my clipboard and I run my search, and it shows me all documents where that character exists. Now, I have two documents here, and I can see from the file name that there's a different name on this one than there is on this one. Look at my relevance rankings here. This document is 100% relevant. And when I look at the invoice number here, it matches my value I searched for. And when I come over to look at this document, we can see it's got a different invoice number, but it's still giving me this as a result. I'll bet you it's because somebody mislabeled the document. So I can also use this as a hint. Sure enough, we have the correct metadata field into here, but we have it less relevant. So someone has misfiled its metadata for the document, but I still found it using that text search. So I never want to fully divorce myself from the text process. Yes, if I'd absolutely done an invoice number search, it would have been the most efficient way to get there. But sometimes human errors can happen, and I have a misindexed document. This helps me to locate that and show me that I have the wrong result here. And that's, again, another use of the relevance ranking. I always start with my first most relevant because this has 2 points of contact: the invoice number on the document and the invoice number in the metadata. Hence 100%. This one only has that value in the document's text, so it's only 50% relevant compared to this one. That's how we can use that relevance ranking. I should also point out I'm in a view here. So when we run our search, just generically, we're always going to run it in a particular view. In this case, I was recently searching for invoices, so I have my invoice view in place. Let's change this to my default view. And now it gives me my default view again, which isn't super different. There's just a few metadata fields that I have for invoices that are now not included into here. If I navigate away from this, so let's go up to my inbox and then come back down to search. When I do my search this time, and again, let's just run my simple search, do my search again for Hamlet, we're back in that default view. So it's always going to remember the last view that I was in. So if I tend to live in a particular view, if there's the kind of thing I'm searching for all the time, I'm always looking for invoice numbers or property values that need to be put into place, or lot numbers for development, or contract numbers for some of my customers, or whatever value it is I'm searching for, I want to live in that world by setting up my own custom view for that. We're going to do a whole session on views later because I think views are one of the most important parts. What I want to point out here is when you're in this advanced search mode, feel free to choose the view that makes the most sense. When we start saving our searches, and that's going to be in session 3 of search, so it'll be a bit before we get there, but don't worry, it'll be worth the next one for going through the advanced functions. When we do our save searches, I can build a search into that. I can make sure that there's a search available for myself to be able to reference against that for the future. But in this case, I want it to be on default because I'm just doing my general searching. All full users can set their own search view. If you're a limited user, or if you have limited users as part of your organization, then you'll probably want to set a view for them that's generic so that when they get into that, whatever that default view wants to be for searches, that they're always in that default view. Individual users can choose what their own default view is going to be. If you're in your search mode, I'll just preview this for you. We're going to go into our Open View Editor. This is available for using the desktop application. It's not in the web client. If I select my Open View Editor, then in here I can set a default for either the system or set as a system default, but then I can also use whatever that system default is for my search is typically what's given for the system default view for view type search results. And that's going to be what I can set that way. So if you're an administrator, you can set that as a global setting for that everybody who comes into this so that people aren't getting the wrong information that's coming out of it. All right. Why we want to use simple searching as opposed to browsing is because you have no idea how I've organized my documents. Chances are they're fairly bad. In fact, if I come over here, what tells you this is going to be a test cabinet and these are all going to be my primary one folder? Because I've decided that's where these documents are going to go, and that's where I've placed them, and you can see them all intermingled in with everything else. So searching helps me to jump to exactly what I'm looking for. So if I want to say, for example, look for the Scottish play, I'll just type that into here and it gives me my results, and again filtered by location because I started up here with my search bar. I also want to point out that this is all in lowercase. If I select one of my documents, let's go in and highlight my results like I've been doing before, we can see that the Scottish play name here is capitalized, but there's no capital M in my search, but it still gives me my results. This is the advantage of the FTS. I don't have to worry about things like capitalization or punctuation because we're searching for that, just using that different set of tools. Now, I'm a huge fan of simple searching because I think it's the fastest way to get people for information. However, I also acknowledge that some people can do bad searching. Sometimes people are looking too broadly, searching for too many points of information, not finding what they want. That's understandable. Putting some rails into this can be useful using some of your saved searches. So for example, if there's standard searches that people are doing, that's where you can encourage them to use that if they're doing bad searching. I know it's going to be a bad search if I come back with 5,000 results. If you ever see search results of 5,000, it means your search term was so broad that it's brought back 5,000 documents, and that's the system default limit to how many results it's going to display, so that we're not just sitting there grinding and showing millions of documents in search results when they're not particularly useful. We cap it at 5,000 so that we don't overwhelm the system with too many bad results coming back.